Welcome, everyone, to one of our real world conversations. I am thrilled to have Ali with me from Australia, and he is an expert in change management. So why don't we start learning a little bit about you? Why don't you give us the introduction?
Thank you very much, Sasha, and good to be with you. And by the way, congratulations on your new adventure and the Newstate University. So, and I'm a big fan. So well done. A bit about me. Look, I'm a passionate, thinking human, always interested in what motivates people, what makes their life easier, and their experience is positive. I chose to be in the business of managing change because I think it's such an important piece that change happens in everybody's life. This is not necessarily at work, but in life as well. And I think if we become good change managers in life and at work, we can deal with a lot of challenges in our lives. And my background is really not in corporate world. My background is in education, and I used to be a university lecturer back home all the way to Baghdad in the 80s. And I used to be a romantic, Sasha. I used to think about Shakespeare and Marlowe and all of these people. And then I discovered later, after migration to New Zealand, something around business improvement and the Kaizen and the Toyota way of improvement, and that fascinated me. And then later I discovered that somehow I'm good at navigating change, and wouldn't it be great to have it as my job, something that I'm good at and I'm passionate at, and it can pay my bills. So that's where we are today.
I love it. And that's that intersection of what you're good at, what you have sort of passion for, and also what makes an impact in the world that you can get paid for. That is like that perfect balance of your sort of career and your mission all together. So that is an amazing match.
Well, I used told this, sometimes in life you go through the experiences and then you read about them later, and then it sort of validates to you. The good thing about authors and writers and thinkers, they articulate what happens in your life, and then sort of it clicks. When I read the book From Good to Great by Jim Collins, I saw that principle around, could you find a sweet spot where you can do something that you're good at? So they introduced me the concept of competency, and that you like what you're doing, that's your passion, and it moves your economical engine, which is your lifestyle. And
Yep.
They're inseparable. And I thought, well, Jim has actually articulated that. And that applies, by the way, to anybody, and it applies to businesses as well. Something that you're good at. That's why there's always the mantra that you do a few things and you do them damn well. Better than studying in too many things at the same time.
Yes, I love that. And that's mission focused too. Like, I think it's
Absolutely
important to stay focused. So as we think about sort of change, and I know you've actually navigated a lot of change yourself, as well as being an expert at it for other people, let's start at the very beginning. So give us the ABCs of change management. What is change management?
Look, it goes back to when I talked about business improvement. That was in the 90s. Lots of businesses, and the boom around the internet and all of that.
Right, the dot-com bust. Yep.
Yes, yeah. Businesses were fascinated by improvement. Can we improve? And obviously, the Kaizen and the Toyota way, and the Americans, learned a lot. In Australia, we follow always what America is doing, unfortunately, sometimes. And so business started pumping a lot of money into business improvement. And after a decade, they have not really realized a lot of return on investment on those business initiatives. And so when they paid a little bit closer attention, then they zoomed in. Some of them went to the factory floor. They discovered that it was not really the initiatives. It was that we made an assumption that people will accept whatever initiatives and improvements that will come our way.
Right.
And
Yes.
so in the early 2000s, we shifted into something called managing change, meaning that is the people side of a project. So if you think about a project, you think about a project in you've got three points for any successful project. You need to have a sponsor, somebody that will actually commission and provision the money for the project. You need a project manager who is driven by three constraints: their budget, their timeline, and their scope. And so where's the people side of things? That's where the change manager comes into place. And the change manager looks after learning, communication, adoption, anything to do with the people side. Now, Sasha, I don't need to remind you that out of all of those three players, the most critical piece is the people side. Why? Because a people side is not really a system and therefore is not as straightforward. So a change might make sense to you, and we are on the same team, may not make sense to me, and although we are the same team, because we look at a change from different perspectives. A change can trigger an opportunity in your head. It can trigger, the same change can trigger a threat in my head. And that's where the complexity of dealing with the human side. And over the years between 2000 and 2010, sort of established around frameworks. So the most common frameworks around change management is the Kota framework and also the ProSci framework as well. And since 2010, I was fascinated by it and sort of complemented where I was in life and my career at the time.
That is fascinating. Yes, I've heard of course, the Kotter methodology before. What happens when a project is approached and the change is not attended to in a productive way? Because just like you can have a project manager, you can have someone managing change at various levels of effectiveness, right? So what are some pitfalls that even change managers need to watch out for when something is changing?
It is unfortunately sometimes, change managers, in my opinion, would need to do a lot of education for their project managers and the sponsors as well. Because some project managers think a change manager is only about writing emails and that's about it. The inverse of a picture perfect of having the change manager working collaboratively with everyone is that if you do not manage this change for the people side of change, you will have obviously a problem in your budget. Your timeframes will be extended. Your adoptions will not. So you'll be basically suffering what companies were suffering in the 90s. You can pump a lot of money in it, but then people will not adopt it. The other thing, there's a strong correlation between managing the change effectively and positively, creating this positive experience, and staff engagement. And which company does not want their staff to be having a buy-in in the mission? So these are really the side effects of not managing the change. Now, imagine if you don't even have a change manager. That will be even more serious. Now, I'm not saying you need to have a change manager for every single project, but you need somebody that will have an oversight around the people side of things. At the same time, we also promote that whilst my role is managing the change, sometimes the title is quite misleading. I actually do not manage the change. The change was already designed by somebody. It will be a luxury if I drive my own changes, but that will be called home. Only at home we drive our own changes. So the change is already designed. What I'm doing, I'm facilitating the adoption of that change. And because I strongly believe that any organization introducing any change, they have one intention, is to improve the customer experience or the staff experience or reducing cost. But whatever it is, nobody's waking up every morning thinking, I'm going to go and disrupt people's lives for nothing. So my mission in life is that if I can enable employees and my friends and anybody that I talk to and in my podcast and, stakeholders like yourself, is that if we become good at managing the change that will come our way, this will differentiate us from the people who do not succeed in life, because in life, there's always a change coming your way. And then if I can help you become a good change manager yourself, that will be a win for all of us. Because then anxiety, there's a correlation between if you manage change effectively, your stress levels and anxiety is actually within control. And the inverse of that, if you don't manage it well, it creates anxiety. One of the side effects of change that is not being managed well is sick leave increase. People actually stop coming to work. And we see that day in, day out. This is another indicator that we always say, look out for the signs. And also, as I mentioned before, the strong link between staff engagement and the way we manage change. This is not an Ali Juma's, evidence. This is actually happening all over the place. We see great, strong evidence that the people who are engaged, their reward system is optimized and their threat level is low. And these are the people who are actually saying, well, I look forward to going to work because my reward system is fully optimized. I've got a say in how the organization is actually managing. And that's the beauty of being, in the game, not outside the game.
Yep. Love it. And that sense of, I think, agency and being able to contribute is something a lot of people value. And, disengagement happens when people don't have those things.
There's a thinker, I call him a thinker, he's Australian, David Rock. And David Rock talks about a SCARF model, SCARF. And when we talk about change, there are 5 things that happen to us or we need to actually think about. So a change can threaten our status. So S in the SCARF, as in a scarf, usual word. S stands for status. When a change happens, immediately some of us look at it from a status perspective. I'll give you an example. We moved company from one street to another, literally 200 meters away from the old street. There are people asking, will I have a car park? That is a status conversation.
Yep.
Okay? They haven't talked about the customers. They haven't talked about all of these things. The C in this curve is for certainty. Will this increase my certainty or decrease it? And so that ambiguity, and most of us, we don't like ambiguity. In fact, the brain is a certainty-making machine. The A in this curve is the autonomy. Some of us value autonomy. For example, myself, if I work with any stakeholder, I will look for 2 things. Will it challenge me? And will it offer me a level of autonomy? Level of autonomy gives me a room to create. And that's where you talk about self-agency. And the R is for relationships or relatedness. Will this threaten my relationships or not? Okay, I've seen organizations laying off people. The people that are actually staying also got upset because we spent long years with our friends and therefore the organization made a decision and we lost those friendships. And the last one, which is really a word in our national anthem here in Australia, is fairness. So we look at the change, is that going to be a fair change or a fair exchange for us or not? And so change managers, through the conversations with the stakeholders, the good change managers, they pay attention to the behaviors and the conversations that happen with their stakeholders. And then they can customize their messages all the way from the design of the solution and the change to the adoption. Notwithstanding, now somebody who's thinking about start, they're not bad people. It's a fair thing to think about, will I have a car park or not? We don't know also if that person is disabled or not disabled. So again, we park all of these and we look at the information at the face value.
Very interesting. I had not heard that scarf before, so that's fascinating. If you are considering all of those elements, hypothetically, say you are starting a project from the very beginning and the change manager is being very thoughtful about how to make this project go well and have the intended effects and get the necessary ROI out of it. What does the setup look like? How do they approach that at the beginning?
With care, with expertise, because that's why experience is really important in here. Although there is no one change that fits all companies, there's no one change that fits all teams as well. So we always recommend that at the outset of the idea, get the change manager to sit around the table with you, because they can be a thinking partner, but also they start thinking about the stakeholders. They have they have an input in the design, because sometimes, Sasha, we receive a solution that was designed by a bunch of tech people. It works, okay? So a phone that Steve Jobs created, Nokia had a phone before. It's the same thing. It does one job. It actually makes calls. But what Steve Jobs has paid attention to is that experience. And so the same, anybody can create the solution and the change. That's not really the secret. The secret in how do you move people and help them. The other thing is that we have to be very educated about, there's a social context for this. For example, in Australia, by nature, we're very casual, we are cynics. And so any change that we introduce, we think by default, we have bad intentions behind it. Okay, we're not, the Americans and the Canadians are different. The people in the UK are different. And I'm talking from experience. So we always say, if you succeed at managing change in Australia, you can succeed anywhere. Because by default, resistance is very high. However, the Australian society, somebody gave me this imagery. And this is not, we're saying the Americans are bad or not. But if you're a leader and you've got a bridge in front of you, in America, Obama will be saying, this is what we're doing. We believe in the leader in America. Okay, we don't question a lot. And so we're going to cross the bridge. In Australia, the same example, they'll say, yes, Ali, we will cross, but first of all, you need to show us the first step. Second thing, we need perhaps to see you cross before us.
There are requirements.
So we build, if you're a leader in Australia, your best asset is your credibility. And this is why, again, leadership is a complex thing in Australia, because by default, we just suspect that everybody's got bad intentions, especially in the corporate world.
Yeah, well, we're getting there in the US, if it makes you feel.
What I'm saying is that the Americans, sometimes actually it's a good thing to believe in the leader because they are responsible. I mean, the reason why we have a leader has got a purpose, right? I mean, they are responsible about the direction of the family, of the company, of the team. That's why they get paid better money. Not because they're good looking or anything, it's because the responsibility is higher than the usual person.
Right. Yeah. That's super interesting. Now, we find ourselves at a point in history not unlike, I guess, the advent of the internet or the Industrial Revolution, but we're really seeing a time of immense change. We thought as a global society, there would be a huge pandemic, and then a few years later, and just an incredible power that has developed in AI. And most of us still have not yet adjusted to the new world order, right? So when organizations start adopting AI technologies, they work differently, they think differently, they approach new skills differently, they even hire differently, right? So how would you approach AI adoption in an organization if you want folks to use it, but there's so much fear in some cases around, will this take my job? Like, how do you approach that?
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned AI. The pandemic was a change, a societal change. Those people who are really good at managing change, understanding the consequences and the impacts, made a living out of the pandemic. So we look at any change and we look at it, well, is there an opportunity in this change? That is a different mindset from somebody saying, God, when will this finish? When am I going to wake up one day and then this all disappears? I've heard this so many times. The same happening with artificial intelligence now. It's not a new thing, but it just come to the surface with the advent of ChatGPT, obviously, in 2022. Immediately. So Sam Altman did not give us a breather for a room. Immediately after the pandemic, he introduced that. And I see, obviously, where I sit, I see all of these big changes or societal changes as opportunities. And I'm going to go back to David Rock's scarf. Do you remember the C in the scarf, what it stands for?
Yes, I think it was consistency. Oh no, I got it wrong?
Certainty.
Certainty, right. It's the opposite of a VUCA world, is certainty.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So certainty. The question that is actually happening right now is that, will this take over my job? That is a lack of certainty. And therefore, when we actually look at change, the C is now in a capital C. It stands out amongst all the equals. Nobody's thinking about a status. People are thinking about my job. I am thinking this is making me more autonomous. It's giving me a lot of autonomy so I can add more value. Okay. Some people thinking, is this going to create another digital divide, which is the fairness aspect of the scarf model? Some people thinking, well, if I'm going to just deal with the robot, what about the human relations? This is the R in the scarf model. So it's all happening again, in front of our eyes. And my mission is to educate people thinking, like any other technology, it's got the good things and the bad things. Okay, the nuclear weapon happened. It's got a horrible thing, but at the same time, we use nuclear for energy. And so you think about those aspects, and then you start deciding there's a difference between, that's my son in the background. There's a difference between people looking at the picture of artificial intelligence thinking, first of all, there's a lot of noise in the market about it, and there's a lot of what the word is actually hype. And then I've been on a mission over the last couple of years thinking, like any other thing, pandemic was a lot of noise for us. Yep. The people that just looked at the signals made a living and an opportunity out of that. Yep. We are in the same now. In the fog of war, some of us are good at looking at the signals and decide, well, this is how I'm going to utilize this technology. In my situation, I promote that. Look at it from perspective of how will AI help me be better? Remember those 3 parameters? Will it make me more competent? Will it create more excitement in my job? I'm dealing with technology, and therefore I'm feeling good about it. And will it get me more value so I can get paid more money? And so if we start thinking about all of these things, then we can be on a winning streak. Now, if you're going to be one of those people that you'll be asking about, well, I'm not touching it because I want all the answers. You remember, we're in Australia. We need to answer the ethical implications. We need the proof that there is no bias in the system. And these are all good things that, change managers can actually do. I am in the middle of an adoption program now with La Trobe University. And then I can see why the university is actually embracing this with minimum resistance. It's because it was driven by the leaders. The leaders are the believers. They also, remember the example about the bridge? They took the first step themselves. Yeah. And so therefore, we actually started seeing them using the technology. And so they alleviated all of these things. And at the same time, the conversation is always about building that capability. And will this actually allow me, and we proved it, that it will give me more time in my day so I can do more meaningful work. Nobody has actually been employed to just respond to emails. And sometimes we spend a lot of our days actually responding to emails.
Yep, agreed. I think some of the huge productivity gains I have seen in my day-to-day have been from a collection of small things that I no longer have to do, right? You can ask for a synopsis of an email conversation in preparation for a call. You can set out like a calendar link, right? So people can find calendar time easier. There's just a whole bunch of little things that it is not value added work anyways. It just took time, right?
Yeah, these are incremental benefits and gains that you see them over a period of time. But one thing that I want to draw your attention and the audience attention to, everybody talks about prompting, and you need to be good at prompting. What I'm saying is that could the technology, and this is again, there's another group that actually talks about the opposite of what I'm going to mention. Could the technology help us be better communicators? Right. So if I'm usually writing emails and then in my own language, and then, I put it in my own perspective, and then sometimes I'll go to Sasha, my colleague, and say, can you read this email? I want to send it to this client. And then Sasha will look at it from her perspective. Now, imagine the artificial intelligence or generative AI will look at it from thousands of people's perspective. Right. And then we'll give you the outcome. If you're going to use that and communicate with your colleague or a stakeholder, there's highly likely you're going to influence the outcome in your favor when you talk to these people. Now, if you zoom out, what has happened really is actually improve the communication between two humans. And Sasha, you and I know the biggest problem in the world is a lack of communication. And wars happen because two people do not see eye to eye, lack of communication. And by the way, every single war in the world, how does it finish? Group of people sit together and communicate. And so we start with a lack of it, and then we close it with communication. So if you become good at prompting, it means that in your head, you started synthesizing information in a better way. And I strongly believe that will make us better communicators. Now, there's another group that will be thinking, if we're going to rely heavily on the artificial intelligence, what value? We're not going to think a lot. I disagree with that. I collaborate with my generative AI, ChatGPT, Copilot, Llama, in different ways. Okay, and I collaborate on ideas. This is helping me being better. Right. In the old days, I pay somebody $5,000 just to critique my work.
Right. Yeah.
We call them coaches. Another example, I give my video for the swing, for my golf swing. I give it to ChatGPT and it analyzed my golf swing. Does that mean that I'm going to lose my coach as a human? No, but I'm not going to see him as often as possible. But I still need that human in the loop because I still need another human So we can, again, the adoption can happen. There's always the negative side of things, but there's also the positive side of things as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything is a coin with two sides, and like any good tool, you can deploy it as a weapon for good or a weapon for evil, right? So, well, thank you for taking the time to really talk us through change management. I appreciate it. Thank you for being on the podcast, Ali.
Absolutely. And I want to read something around knowledge, if you allow me.
Please do.
There's a quote by Mark Twain that really influenced me over a period of time, and I want to read it to the audience. I'm actually looking for it now, and
there is a Mark Twain quote that my father introduced me to many years ago that I'm sure some folks are familiar with as well. That is a good quote for meetings, but I'm sure your quote is much more profound.
Oh yeah, it talks about when we look at development and technology, and I mean, in his time there was not a lot of that, but it says 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things you didn't do than by the ones you did do. So throw off the bowlines, sail away from the safe harbor, catch the trade winds in your sails, explore, dream, discover.
I love that. The man in the arena quote, are you familiar with that one?
Totally, yes.
I love that. I love that quote. And one of my favorite authors, Jeanette Winterson, has this quote that from our risk comes our safety, not the small, sad life that clings to anything because it has nothing. Yeah, so be bold in this age, right? Go with the change.
Have a go, be a good change. And somebody taught me this: fall in love, add value to society by falling in love with the problems, because society needs people that will help them solve problems.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Now I feel all inspired as well as more knowledgeable about change management. So thank you, and we'd love to talk to you again.